Welcome, everybody, to another day of Barroom Network broadcasting. This is the first of 4 shows today. And if you are not a subscriber to our YouTube channel, please do so. All you need is a Google account. Hit the subscribe button, and you will get alerts on your device letting you know when we are live. And we are live right now with Mr. Greg Gabriel. Greg, how are you, my friend?
I'm wonderful. How about you?
Good. I'm well. Did you get a workout in this morning?
Absolutely.
What'd you do today? Like 350-pound squats and stuff like that?
No, I did legs and chest. So I didn't do bench presses. I did chest presses. So you're sitting down versus laying down.
Okay.
Did inclines, did flies, did leg presses, leg curls.
Jeez.
Worked on my calves. I do like total of like 33, 34 sets.
I'm feeling so tired right now. Just hearing you go through all that. I'm fatigued. And do you do aerobic type exercises throughout the week? Or
I don't do. I used to do aerobic every day, and I haven't since I got that, lung infection.
Right.
I a couple times a week, and when the weather's good and my wife's off and she's off all next week, we'll go for a bike ride every day. Usually go for about an hour and 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. So that, and I got some stuff in the basement that I use. I got an elliptical and a bike, but, I don't do anywhere near what I used to do. And it's mainly because of that bacterial infection that I have. So
not fun, is it?
No, just, when you get into aerobic activity, and when I lift, I try to do anaerobic type stuff. I'm only going like 35 to 40 seconds in between sets. Mm-hmm. So, you're constantly getting your heart rate up and keeping it up. And then, my whole workout might only last 45 minutes then.
Okay. Do you have a trainer? You do all this on your own? I'm assuming it's all on your own, right?
No, on my own. That's what my degree's in. So I think I know how to do it.
I would agree with that. All right, OTAs have commenced over at Hallis Hall. Some the Bears players and head coach Matt Eberflus met with the media yesterday, so we got some good things to react to. Greg, overall, I wanted to get your picture of what is happening with these early OTAs. Eberflus has said that they're basically kind of looking at conditioning, but can you kind of fill in the blanks there with maybe what they are doing with these young players who are at these OTAs?
Well, OTAs and mini camps are really the exact same thing as far as the practice routine. Now, today, there's not an OTA, but it's an off-season program day. Mm-hmm. So there'll be lifting, there'll be meetings, and they can go out in the field and do instructional, but you can't go offense versus defense. So the offense on one side of the field, defense on the other side of the field, and you can work on stuff, but you can't go against people. Where in OTAs and minicamp, you can have 7-on-7, 1-on-1. You can have 12 or 11-on-11, all that stuff. So, but what you're doing is they're installing the offense, installing the defense, and finding out who is picking up things quickly, who makes too many mental mistakes. It's tough to grade offensive and defensive linemen in that environment because there's no contact, but you can grade them as far as knowing the assignment. Are they going to the right person, especially because it's an outside zone scheme? Are they going in the right direction, going towards hitting the right person? And you can make initial contact. You just can't have real contact. You can just touch the guy, so to speak. Right. But I will say now the league or the union can get fired up about this, but when you get into the 1-on-1s and the 7-on-7s, they can get a little physical at times. But you have to take this stuff and turn it into the league. And if the league looks at it or the union looks at it and they say, Wait a minute, you're breaking some rules here. They can dock you a day or two of OTAs or whatever, or fine you. So you got to be careful on how you do.
Like a player from a union player sending tape to the Players Association saying, "Hey, what's going on here? I think we're being overworked," or how would that process be?
No, the team automatically has to send it in.
Oh, I see. Oh my goodness, can't get away with anything nowadays, right?
No.
Outstanding. One of the things that, of course, everybody is taking a look at is the progress of Justin Fields. And I got a good question here from Brent Murphy. He even posted before the show started. Actually, no, that's not the one. This is from Sanjan. He asked, what would Fields' improvement look like to you in 2022? So he wants to get kind of perhaps a metric or some sense as to how is what would you say? Okay, he's improving.
I don't know if you can come up with a quote metric. It's number one from the coach's point of view. It's how quickly is he picking up the offense so that he can get in the huddle, give out a play. It's different terminology, different play calls. So that part's difficult. And except for the guys that came over from Green Bay, and there's only two of them, all this stuff is going to be brand new to them. So that part, it's not only Justin Fields, it's just about everybody on the team. And the same thing on the defensive side of the ball, which is going to be more, geared to what they were doing in Indianapolis the last 4 years. So getting accustomed to that. Obviously, you're trying to figure out, who can play. But with Justin Fields, like I say, it's how quickly is he picking up things? And then when you get into 7-on-7, even some 11-on-11, is he making the right reads? Is he getting the ball out of his hand quickly? Is he throwing with accuracy? Those types of things. Now, there's been a couple quick 5, 6, 7-second shots that have came over on Twitter yesterday, and they're from a distance, so it's hard to tell. But it does look like, and also from watching his workout sessions down in Georgia early in the year, he has tightened up his delivery. Not exactly where I want it yet, but I'm picky. But it's not as pronounced, that dropping of the ball and that hitch, for lack of a better word, at the top of his delivery. A lot of that has gone away. There's still a little bit there, but he's getting, the motion itself is a lot more fluid, and it's coming out of his hand quicker.
Do you think that can ever be totally corrected, or is sometimes with certain players that's so ingrained, a muscle memory kind of thing, that you just sort of kind of live with it?
No, it can be improved, but it's not something that happens overnight, because there is muscle memory. And a lot of times, you can work on things, and then you get in the heat of the game and you automatically revert back. So it's constant repetition in practice, and when he's working on his own, of making sure he's doing it the correct way.
Well, you mentioned two members of the Packers. One of them met with the media yesterday, offensive lineman, his center, Lucas Patrick, and he was asked to evaluate Justin Fields, and he shared this.
Fast. Yeah, he can get moving pretty quick. No, he's a fun guy. He's young, so he likes to have the juice and the energy, and he's got a live arm. I mean, there were a few throws he made today where that ball just, it's like it keeps getting faster in the air, and he's soaking everything up. Like whether it's coaches, me, or stuff he's telling me. I mean, it's really good. I mean, he's couldn't have a better start to a working relationship.
It sounds like is he almost beyond your expectations of what you thought out of him in terms of his arm and the things you were just.
I mean, I have pretty high expectations. You don't get drafted as high as he does, in the National Football League just for. Kind of having a wet noodle or, slow feet. Like he's he's really talented. I thought he was going to be really good, and he's exceeding my expectations.
How important is it for that center and quarterback to have a relationship of mutual trust and respect for one another?
Well, that's very important, but the center position itself does not get the praise that it deserves.
Mm-hmm.
That guy's the glue of the offense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the most important guy is the quarterback, so that's Justin Fields. But he's the leader of the offensive line. In most cases, he's making all the line calls. So he knows what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And, right now he is the veteran. And he's only been in the league, this is his 5th year in the league, yet, he's the veteran offensive lineman. He started a lot of games. Last 2 years, he started all but 2 or 3 games in Green Bay, and he's been a solid player. So he's already earned a Spurs. So now it's because he's familiar with the terminology of the offense. Now the playbook might not be the exact same thing because they're gonna, they'll adjust plays to fit the skill set of the players, but the terminology, the basic terminology of the scheme is the exact same thing as he's been playing with, the last 4 years up in Green Bay.
Mm-hmm. Let me get another question. This is the one that I was referring to earlier. I don't want to forget it. I came in several minutes before we actually came in at 3:08 a.m. Wow, this guy was ready to go. He's talking about standing in line to get a ticket. Brent says, hey, if you guys get a chance, could you touch on Charles Snowden and how he might fit this scheme at defensive end, and if you think he could make the roster? Thanks. You all are my favorite Bear show. Always excellent. Thank you, Brent. So what do you recall of Snowden, who was, I believe, an undrafted free agent last season, came in with quite the pedigree as a pass rusher, but maybe not having a catalog of moves that he had to work on. What can you add to that?
Well, he didn't get drafted because really he missed the last part of his final season at Virginia. He was not ready to go through a full workout during the pro day. So there was questions about that. And so that's why he ends up getting undrafted. He's really, he's a tall, lean guy, very, very long. He's got pretty good strength, but he's going to have to get bigger to play within this scheme because now he's not going to be on his feet. Now edge players are edge players. Mm-hmm. And in the National Football League now, you're playing at least 80% of the time, you're in your sub defense where that outside linebacker isn't an outside linebacker. He's a defensive end up on the line of scrimmage and he's going to rush. Difference is he going to rush from a 2-point stance or a 3-point stance? And a lot of times in the previous defense, these guys would rush from a 2-point stance. I can't tell you what Coach Flus wants these guys to do because we haven't seen it. We're not going to find that out until training camp, and training camp's only going to have a few practices open. It's not like it used to be down at Bourbonnais, and when they are open, there's going to be, limited capacity as to how many fans can go in there.
Right.
But so reality is you'll find out in training camp. Can he make the team? I think when you look at the roster the way it is now, and they'll probably keep 4 edge players, mm-hmm. He's got a rough hill to climb. He's got the talent to do it. There's no question. But, they brought in Mohammed from the Colts.
Right.
You got Gibson. You got Quinn. So, and then you got, what was the guy's name we picked up last year?
Caleb?
No, there's one other vet from last year, and he got hurt. And then there's Snowden. So Snowden's like, 5th or 6th on the depth chart, and he's got to show good. But if that weight at 245 is accurate, it probably isn't. He's got to get bigger and stronger to be able to play the run in a 4-man front.
Atoshu, thank you, Big Trouble.
Yes.
Jack. And Jordan and everyone else who chimed in with Atoshu. All right.
I don't have the roster in front of me. That's why I just couldn't have I didn't remember the name of it.
And I have the roster in front of me, and yet I still screwed it up. So, another question here from Danger T says, Greg, good question. I was watching a Carson Palmer documentary. What happened with Carson Palmer on draft day? He said he wanted the Chicago Bears to draft him. Were you a part of that draft with the Bears organization?
Yeah, but Carson Palmer went first.
Yeah, so that wasn't going to happen.
It's all over.
Was there any talk about possibly trading up and exploring trade?
No. That's the year we took Rex.
Okay.
And Rex was the fourth quarterback off the board.
Mm-hmm.
We took Michael Haynes at 13 or 14, and then we took Rex at 20 or 21. There was no way we wanted the 2-1s. We weren't going to try to get to number one, and Cincinnati wasn't about to trade number one.
Mm-hmm.
So it became a moot point.
What happened with Haynes? Because when he was drafted, I believe he went to Penn State, right?
Right. He was MVP at the Senior Bowl. I'll tell you exactly what happened. And his agent wouldn't be pissed off at me for saying this. He has no football character. Mm-hmm. Nice guy, great guy. Mm-hmm. He doesn't love football, and it cost the scout his job here. Wow. Because that's one thing we put on the scouts is they better get that part right.
Mm-hmm.
You can miss. Here's what we told them, and I've said this before. You can miss on the evaluation because there's other people to back you up and look at it. We're getting at least at half a dozen reports. Mm-hmm. You can't. You're the guy going into the school, and Penn State. In fairness, Penn State's a tough place to get accurate information. Was when Joe Paterno was there, a very tough place to get accurate information. But reality is that he liked the game. He didn't love the game. He liked the money. He didn't like, he wasn't a bad person. He's a good person, but he shouldn't have been playing football.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. That's how guys fail. Guys that lack football character. And we go back to Justin Fields and another perfect example, Josh Allen. Josh Allen, a lot of criticism from fans when Buffalo took Josh Allen. Mm-hmm. And, because he was a sub 60% thrower at Wyoming. And when he played against good teams like Iowa, he looked awful. So they're saying, what are you doing? But Josh Allen's football character is it's off the charts. Mm-hmm. And he would do everything he possibly could to get better. Mm. And as you've seen, he's gotten better every year. Now he's probably one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in all of football. I can see Justin Fields being similar as far as football character. He works at it. He wants to be a great player. Mm-hmm. He's got the tools to be a great player. Now he's got to put it all together.
Well, that is music to our ears. Absolutely. He still has to prove it on the football field, but boy, so many indications that he could be one of the really good ones, maybe a great one in this league. So that is cool. In yesterday's press conference, there was a really fascinating segment when Jalen Johnson was talking about his play, talking about the rookies. In fact, let's listen to that one first. This is JJ and the 2 rookie defensive backs that were drafted in round 2.
Definitely know they can make plays on the ball. I've seen Kyler do it in college, and now kind of watching the film from minicamp, watching the film in the last couple of days in OTAs, he's made some plays, as well as the safety as well. I mean, they rake out the ball. They are ball hawks. They're ball hungry. So, I mean, that's definitely a good thing, knowing that they're aggressive towards the ball.
Just right away as a rookie in here, what do they need to do to come in here and be able to do that, too, in terms of, right from the day one?
Have a short memory. I feel like that's big for corner, but especially as a rookie corner. You're going to mess up. You're going to have balls caught on. You're going to be in uncomfortable situations. But really just keep moving forward, keep refreshing your mind each and every day you come in, and just keep trying to get better.
Team used its 2 top draft picks on defensive backs. As someone who also plays in the secondary, how did that make you feel?
Excited. just to have some high-level guys come in and be able to contribute. I mean, we had a lot of people leave our secondary, so, I mean, we definitely needed some replacements, and I feel like that's what they did. So, I mean, definitely helped the team out a lot.
You left out the best part.
Which one was that?
Well, then somebody asked a question like, "Well, do you think they should be like, basically thrown to the wolves?" And he said, "Yeah,
Yes, exactly. That is true. Do you?
put them there. Find out if they can play."
Yeah, and you agree with that?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll agree to it to the point where if they're making too many mental mistakes, physically, they can play physically. They've already proved they can play physically. But it's the mental part of the game, and again, it's knowing the terminology, and they disguise defenses and knowing how to do that accuracy. You make a mental mistake in the secondary, it's usually a touchdown. So assuming they can, pick up on the mental part of the game, get them in there and play.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on, the chemistry with Jalen Johnson and those two rookies, because those two guys have come in and immediately expressed that they want to be leaders. And Matt Eberflus was effusive in his praise of Kyler Gordon yesterday, and this was on a question about Jalen Johnson. So it almost seemed to me, maybe I was reading too much into it, that Eberflus was saying, you got to pick up your game here, Jalen, because this other kid that we just drafted, we are in love with him. Do you think that could be a tactical maneuver by Eberflus to fire up his veteran?
No, I think he said, that Jalen's got a lot to learn. And part of it, the lot to learn is learning the defense, just like everybody else has got to learn.
True.
They played in an entirely different scheme last year. And so now it's learning to play within this scheme where they disguise the coverages a lot more. And, from what Ballard has told me, I'm very familiar with this defense, having worked with it, with Lovey for a number of years. But from what I've been told from people in Indianapolis is that if you wanted to put a 101, 202, 303, Lovey's was 101 and this one's 303 or 404. He's got a lot more complexities to it than Lovey ever had, even though the base scheme is the exact same thing. And that's not knocking Lovey in any way at all. It's just that Flus has taken this scheme to a different level.
Yeah. Back when Lovey was head coach of the Bears, what would you guesstimate the split on playing a good old-fashioned cover two and the nickel defense? Because now it's like 80-20 nickel, and so I would imagine it's almost reversed now.
Well, first of all, the base cover two, that's just the name, because they don't play that much cover. They play some cover too, but if you got guys that can play press and they're real good at press, and we had two guys that could play press in Tillman and Nate Fasher, then you don't have to, you're playing zone because you can't play press. Okay. And so if you can do that, then you're going to play man or off man a lot more. Now, off man's harder to play than press because it's like a half zone, half press man, and that you're not lining head up on the player. And so you're not jamming him, and you've got to have your instincts and anticipation on what that guy's going to do, because you're not lined up in his face. It's got to be very, very good.
Yeah, interesting. And Jalen was asked by a reporter about taking risks, and I think the question's loaded here, and his response.
At times, to me, it seems like you were a little bit hesitant to kind of pull the trigger and take some risks, like maybe not wanting to make mistakes deep. Do you think that new confidence will allow you to kind of pull the trigger, or maybe even having the ball in front of you? You think that'll allow you to kind of take some risks where maybe it was like, I don't want to get beat, I ain't going to make that jump?
I feel like my role last year, following number one wide receiver, I feel like there's not too many risks you can take. So, I mean, I feel like depending on what my role is moving forward, depending on the flow of the game, what I'm being called to do, I feel like calls for different techniques and different, like you said, risks you can take. But I definitely don't think that there was too many more risks that I can take last year, always having that prime matchup.
Make of that.
Well, I watched that interview hour and a half ago. And, it was only like 8-9 minutes long. So you're not going to get a whole lot. But I think there's questions he didn't like that reporters were asking about them, basically sucking last year, being at the bottom. And I think he took exception to it.
Yeah, I agree.
And so, but at the same time, he wanted to be polite and answer the questions. And so, I kind of, give him a pat on the back for the composure. He could have said, "Screw you," and he didn't. And I didn't like some of the questions. It's you had a different coaching staff coaching an entirely different scheme. Now that was last year. This is this year. He can't do anything about last year. And so let's move forward.
And he did talk about the Eberflus defense and how much he likes the fact that he's going to be looking at the quarterback more in this scheme. And so that might allow him to take more chances. And we'll see if he can deliver some more turnovers than he has in his first 2 years in the league.
Well, that's where anticipation and instincts come into play. And part of that is experience. So he's the first thing he's got to do is learn the scheme. And once he gets comfortable in the scheme, then, I don't see him taking a lot of chances early on. Now, early on could be training camp in the preseason. And by then he could feel, pretty comfortable within the scheme. So, and that's the same with everybody back there. So it's, what do they want? More turnovers? More? Sure. I mean, I'm sure he does too. And he's a competitor. There's one thing you can say about Jalen Johnson when you watch it. He might get beat sometimes, and the one thing he said, just to back up, what's the most important thing you can tell these young guys is to have a short memory, and he has a short memory.
Yeah.
You get beat, you got to throw it out of your mind and on to the next play. Because when you dwell on it, you're going to get beat again.
You like Jalen Johnson a lot, don't you? You like his talent and you like the way he comports himself.
Yeah, and I think this scheme will do him well. He'll play well with it. Really, him and the new guy, they're both about the same size. 5'11 and a half, 6 feet. They got length to them. They're fast. They're really, really athletic. They're explosive. It gives you two good-sized corners on the football field, and that's got to help.
I'm reading some of the comments here. There's a brawl going on in the stands, Greg, between the Don Burr, the Detroit Lions fan who likes to come in and troll, and several of the other people, including Jordan. So we might have to set up a grudge match between those guys. All right, back to our Chicago Bears. I was looking at some of the numbers for Cole Kmet last season. I failed to put them into graphic form, but in terms of his receptions, he was probably around 15th among all tight ends last season. And unfortunately, he had 0 touchdown catches. What kind of an improvement do you want to expect to see out of Cole Kmet this season?
Well, we spent the better part of a show on this one not too long ago. And I think with the fans, what the fans want him to be and what he is are two different things. Cole Kmet is a pure Y who you can flex out as a move guy, but that's not his game. His game is a Y. So he had 60 receptions next year. Maybe he'll have 70 this year. But don't confuse him with Kelsey or some of these other guys that are move tight ends, and you can call them F, you can call them U, you can call them H. Depends on the offense what the terminology is. But that's not what he is.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to accept what he is. And the offense as a whole sucked last year.
Yes, it did.
We know that. So, was that his fault?
Mm-hmm.
No. And like I said, he still caught. When you look at his numbers as compared to other guys at his position, he's right up. The arrow keeps going up. He's right there. Mm-hmm. I got no problem. I don't know why people got problem with this guy. The guy's a hell of a tight end, and this team wants to run the ball. And if you want to run the ball, you better have a why.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're wasting a receiver because you're putting another tackle in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to be able to run the ball, and this negates that. Excuse me.
And totally. And I think that we can probably list another half dozen to a dozen reasons as to why the receiving production wasn't more than what it was last season.
What's wrong with 60 for a second-year tight end?
Yeah, exactly. A 22-year-old tight end who was needed in the blocking scheme on so many plays. I mean, with that offensive line being what it is, he needed to chip. He needed to stay back and do a lot of blocking for his quarterback.
And on top of that, they wanted to keep bringing in Jimmy Graham to be the go-to guy on a lot of things, and the game had passed him by.
Yeah, I totally agree. Pompous Pilot says Kmet was a bright spot. Nagy ruined everything. How much of the growth or lack of growth among some players do you attribute to Matt Nagy's coaching?
I think that remains to be seen.
Okay,
we got to see what they're going to do within this scheme.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to get on to one other subject, because I know and when we were texting back and forth, you were talking about you want to talk about some of the new players, and they signed a tackle yesterday, Sean Coleman, who I'll talk about in a minute. But there's a lot of fans that want either Dwayne Brown or Eric Fisher.
Right.
It ain't happening.
Okay.
First of all, with Fisher's played in two places in the last, his career. He played in Kansas City. Who was there? Poles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Kansas City decided not to bring him back after he tore his Achilles. And why did they choose that? Because his game was going south. Okay. He wasn't the player that he was. The Colts lost their, left tackle Costanza. They were in a bind,
mm-hmm.
and they were hoping to get something out of him. Chris knew him when he was a good player, having been at Kansas City, and brought him in coming off the Achilles. Now Achilles is not as serious now as it was 8-10 years ago, because the surgical techniques have changed.
Mm-hmm.
I only know that because I tore mine 3 years ago. So I did a lot of research. And, the recovery time isn't long. You can get back on the field. It's still a long time, but you're back up to 100% a lot quicker than you were 8-9 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that surgical technique they have was just started 9 years ago, and has become mainstream for that injury in the last 4 to 5 years. But, Fisher plays for the Colts. He didn't play good. The Colts tried to bring him back? Nope. So now, and who was there? Flus. So why in God's name would they even think about it? Now, could it happen? Sure, anything can happen. But when you think that God, my eyes itch.
Allergy time. Tell me.
Yeah, I know.
Time it's been a bad out there.
When he's failed in 2 spots, and the 2 main decision makers for the organization came from those 2 spots, tell me why you'd even think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And with Dwayne Brown, not a bad player. He's going to be 37 years old during training camp. In the middle of training camp, he turns 37. Does that sound like something that Ryan Poles would do? Looking at everything he's done? No, he wants to find out who can play with these young guys.
All right.
And so that's what they're going to go with.
Mm. Yeah, and it's going to be quite the battle. Right guard, left tackle are the 2 positions I think that are up for grabs. And they've got a lot of evaluation to do among all the players. And I know the players are playing different positions so they can get a good sense as to who's picking things up quickly. And then the big test, of course, is when they're in pads. So that's
right. Absolutely. But I just, it could happen. I don't see it happening, which brings you back to Coleman. I mean, Coleman they got for at the veteran minimum.
Mm-hmm.
I went back and he came out 2016. I had him as the 11th rated tackle in that draft. Thought he'd go in the 3rd or 4th. I think he went in the 3rd to Cleveland. Okay. Sat as a rookie, like many rookie offensive linemen do. Started every game the next year. They weren't totally satisfied, but he got traded to San Francisco, and then he got hurt. And so he missed the better part of 2 years because of the injury. Then he comes back in 2020 and COVID hits, and he opts out. But see, if anybody had a legitimate excuse for opting out, it was this guy. This guy went through leukemia in college.
Wow.
Missed 2 years of play because of leukemia when he was a freshman and sophomore at Auburn. Now, his last 2 years, he ended up being a 5-year guy because of that. His last 2 years, he was a pretty damn good football player.
Mm-hmm.
Started at left tackle the last 2 years. Now, I saw him more as a right tackle. He's playing on the left side, but more of a right tackle in our league. And like you say, he started at right tackle for Cleveland every game in his 2nd year. So I think that was 2017. But, basically what I think he's a camp body right now. Until he proves otherwise,
right.
He's a camp body.
Well, we wish him luck. He's come through. He's gone through a lot. And speaking of going through a lot, the awful video of Tariq Cohen popping his Achilles heel. What do you think about? He wrote a moving article about the tribulations he's faced in his personal life. What do you think about this whole thing with Tariq?
Just awful for him because, and I think. The whole purpose of putting that out on Instagram Live was, hey, I'm ready. Sign me.
Yeah.
And then boom, just like that. Just an awful thing. When I saw it too, I looked at it and I said, I played it back because I thought, did he turn his ankle? Because I wasn't watching real close. He's doing the thing through the not really bags, but those.
I couldn't figure out the name of those things.
And then he is almost like a defensive back type drill that he was doing, and then he plants with his right foot and to go straight forward, and he goes down right away. When I watched it the second time, I knew exactly what happened. He grabbed the back of his heel, and just the way he went down, I said, I've been there. I know what happened. I know what it feels like. And I tweeted it out. I said, I hope it's not an Achilles, but it sure as hell looks like an Achilles.
Mm-hmm. That sound, Greg. I mean, did you hear?
Yeah, I did. After somebody said you could hear it pop.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that was just happenstance or that was really it.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I did it, I didn't hear a damn thing. All I know is I tore it. I mean, right away, I know I tore it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a knock at the door. My dog's going crazy, and I'm sitting where I'm sitting now.
Uh-huh.
So I pop up out of the chair to run over to the door to answer it to get the dog to shut up, and it popped halfway there.
Wow.
And so, and it hurt, but in reality, the hurt was no more than 3 or 4 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
because then it just started to swell up, and it was numb.
Mm.
But I knew what it was. A guy, there's a guy at the door, and he goes, and I'm like, got this distressed look in my face, and he goes, "Well, what's wrong with you?" And I go, "I just tore my Achilles." I knew exactly what it was.
Wow, that is awful. Yeah, and an awful, awful noise. I've heard it before when it happened to an athlete who was on the football field. I was watching the game, and I heard that sound. And yesterday, when I heard it in that Tariq video, I said, "Man, it sounds like the Achilles." So I want to get a few more questions out of here. CJ Williams asked about Gisay Tretter. I don't think this is an option, right? He's a center. He's still out there as a free agent. I don't think
He's a center only, and they've already made that decision for Lucas Patrick to be the center.
Yeah.
So you're not going to go midstream and put him at guard.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, could it happen? Sure, it could happen. But I just don't see it happening. Again, when you look at what he's trying to do, he's not trying to bring in a lot of age. This guy's already played in the league 9 years.
Yep, exactly. Tony, the pod boss, says, are fans counting Sam Mustipher out to start at guard, or is he a career backup and can he only play center?
Well, he's only played center. I mean, he's practiced at guard.
Mm-hmm.
He's practiced at guard here. He practiced at guard at Notre Dame. In games, all he's played, as far as I know, is just center. I don't think he's played guard in the preseason. He's not a bad center. I think when you get through this off season, and Sam got too heavy, and he didn't get too heavy because he wanted to get too heavy. He got too heavy because that's what Juan Castillo wanted.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think if you get him down to where he was in college, which is around 310 to 315, versus he was over 330 last year, you're going to see him move a lot better. Is he the answer? No. I don't know who the right guard is going to be. I don't think they know who the right guard is going to be. It could be the rookie from San Diego State. It could be Borum. And I say that is because Brooks, the tackle they drafted from Southern Utah, he's a pretty good player. Why he lasted as long as he did is kind of beyond me. Very, very athletic guy. And I saw something this morning where the offensive line coach said he's a natural pass protector. So right away, that caught my eye, that he says that, and he's been in 2 OTAs and a rookie minicamp. So, Borum, people say, well, is Borum a fit to this scheme? Well, Borum got, and I think we talked about this the last show we had too. Borum was about 350 his last year at Missouri, maybe 355. He was too heavy.
Right.
Dropped down to 322 for his pro day and moved pretty damn good. And I've seen videos of that pro day. And then when he gets here, Juan said, "You're too skinny." And then he gets back up to 335. Okay, you get him in the 3 teens, it's a different guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And remember what I said, because I know this weight program, and Jimmy Arthur runs it. Jimmy was the assistant when Rusty was here. It deals with body fat and muscle mass. So it's not just getting your weight down.
Okay.
It's having the right percentage of body fat. And for offensive linemen, they want them 20, 22, 23%, not any more than that. So if you, and weight, if you're within the parameters of the body fat, you can actually be, quote, overweight because your body fat is fine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so like if he has let's say I'm making up the number here, he has an assigned weight of 318 pounds and 21.5% body fat, and he comes in at 19% body fat and 322 pounds. He's not overweight. He's fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because his percentage of body fat is actually less than what the parameters say he has to be.
I want to get back to a couple of more questions. And by the way, but staying on that topic for a second, just a follow-up question. So one of the reasons that I like Sam Mustipher so much is because he is so doggone smart.
Yep.
And so that allows you to overcome some of the physical deficiencies that he might possess. How much weight do you put on a player's intelligence in the overall evaluation of whether a guy can be a starter or a good backup?
Well, the intelligence factor, especially for the center, is up here. And that's what he mainly is. Now, I look at it this way, too, is that if he's going to be on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see the rookie from Illinois being on the 53 this year. I see him as a practice squad guy,
Mm-hmm.
just from what I saw on tape of him in Illinois. But Mustipher, but this is his fourth year. He's going into his fourth year now in the league.
25 years old, yeah.
Right. And he started for the last 2 years, so he's got a lot of experience.
Mm-hmm.
You go into Sunday, the rule of thumb, now they're moving it up to 8 offensive linemen, but it used to be 7 offensive linemen plus your deep snapper would dress on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
So that means your 2 backups had to be able to play more than one position. One guy had to be able to play center and guard. Your tackles had to be able to play both sides, right and left tackle. And, you know, hopefully your backup guard not only was he a backup center, but a backup tackle just in case. So, you know, you've got to have that versatility. So I think part of this offseason is finding out if Sam Mustipher can play guard so that he is a guy that you could rely on during the season as one of your backups, because you'll have that versatility of being able to go in as a guard or a center if somebody goes down.
Adeptus says Mustipher's brain still can't figure out how to move a nose tackle off the ball in short yardage situations. So it's the typical, and I hate to phrase it this way, Adeptus, but it's a common criticism of Sam Mustipher is that he just doesn't have the physicality to move some of these bull rushers and some of these more stout defensive linemen.
Well, you don't necessarily have to move them, but you want to be able to turn them.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so if you can go like this and just to create something, you know, there's, and I go back because Olin and I have talked about Mustipher. Olin thinks Mustipher is a pretty good player.
Yeah.
Okay, and Olin's one of the best centers of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with what he says versus what. Did he play great last year? No, but again, I thought he looked better the year before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of it was they got him too damn heavy, and then you lose mobility.
Yep. A lot of great praise coming in for what you're sharing with people, Greg. I got to pay you more.
My hands out.
Some more questions. We got a lot of good ones here. But yeah, on that same topic of Mustipher, Lucas Patrick says, Tony the Pod Boss, Lucas Patrick said the guys that play really fast are usually the ones that play. Mustipher will flourish in the system and look well. Zone versus true pass sets fit him. You agree?
Yeah, I agree with that. But again, I think what they're trying to find out now is he a viable, because really, if he can't play guard, then there is a question of whether he makes the team. Okay, and what they're going to do. Generally speaking, you keep 9 offensive linemen on the 53-man roster. So, with all those backups, versatility is very, very important. That doesn't mean that's going to be the position they're going to lock into down the road once they become starters. But as backups, they got to be able to play more in one position.
All right, back to some more questions here. We've got, back when we were talking about Cole Kmet, Jamal Lewis offered up a really good question. Is there a tight end in the league that fans could say that guy and Cole Kmet are the same guy? Kmet should put up his stats. So is there a comp for a Cole Kmet that you can think of off the top of your head? I know these types of questions are always difficult and needs a little thought, but anything come to mind?
I'll tell you the guy who reminds me of, and this goes way back, and he was a great tight end, is Mark Bavaro we had in New York. We drafted him in the 4th round when I was in New York. And they have the same type of game. And back then, you didn't really play with 2 tight ends unless they were both wise, and you went to a 2 tight end look and they were lined up in tight. You didn't have that move tight end like you have now. So he's, I'd have to look at the other rosters in the league to come up with a name right off the bat. But I know right now I can say he's on the upper echelon of pure wise. And why is that? It's really a simple answer. Nobody in college uses one anymore.
Yeah.
They're all split out wide, and they're big wide receivers, and they create mismatches, and they can't block worth of shit. And then they get into our game, and they have to learn how to block. Now, he came from Notre Dame. Notre Dame does a good job getting that type of guy. They're going to have a guy next year who's going to be a first-round pick. That's another guy like Kmet. He might be a step faster. But he's not more. I mean, he's not going to be a guy that's going to run the 4.5s. He might run 4.65, 4.64, and he's more like Gronk than Gronk is Gronk. This guy at Notre Dame now, but that's what Notre Dame looks for, because they want to have a good running game. But there's not a lot of schools that do that. Alabama will go out and get some guys that can block and play it. But most schools are like the kid who came from Florida and went 4th overall pick in the draft a year ago. That guy's a big wide receiver. Right? He was, he's a 4.4, 4.38 guy who was, 6'4", 6'5", 250 pounds. He's a big wideout is what he was. And then you're going to put him in the slot at, like all the move tight ends are, and he's going to be a mismatch.
Yeah. It's fascinating, and maybe in a future show, I'll put together a list of all the white tight ends in the NFL and have you kind of make comparisons. Might be kind of a fun exercise to do. And Jordan just brought up a name that I thought of when comps wise was Kyle Rudolph.
He's a better athlete than Kyle Rudolph.
Yeah.
I would say that right now. And Jordan, that is a good one. Kyle's bigger. As far as he's taller, but Kmet's a better athlete. He's faster. You look at their combine numbers, and have looked at their combine numbers. Kmet's are better across the board. But yeah, that is a pretty good description. Now, Rudolph's not playing anymore. He went to New York last year, and right now he's out on the street. And part of the reason is somebody will sign him, but they probably won't sign him until training camp, because they're going to find out they need somebody who can block. And he might be the best at the position right now, as being a blocking Y.
Excellent. Okay. Interesting question from Winston Robbins. He says, Greg, who are your top 3 general managers? Ballard and Brandon Beane have to be 2 on your top 3 list. Can you offer up maybe even if it's not 3, but just some of the general managers in the league that you respect?
I think Howie Roseman does a great job.
Mm-hmm.
During the season, the fans in Philly hate him, but hell, the fans in Philly hate everybody during the season.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at some of the things he did now. He just signed this morning that tight end, Bradford, that was, the Giants had to let go as a cap casualty, gave him a 1-year, $10 million contract. He fills needs for his team as good as anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if Howie's, I worked for Howie for 1 year as a consultant. I don't know if he's the greatest evaluator, but understanding what needs to be done
Mm-hmm.
and have, know what the cap's all about. And he's very, very good.
Mm.
But the one thing I don't like, he likes to churn that scouting department, and he totally turned it around this year. And I don't know why he does it. And he's done it a few times since he's been. They got rid of just about everybody in that scouting department and brought in all new faces.
Do you think that might be just because it's sort of like, hey, we need some fresh ideas here. We need a new way of looking at things. And that's, that's the management philosophy I've seen in my career. Perhaps he's using that same approach.
Well, he lost his two main lieutenants. Okay. Ian came here.
That's right.
And then the other guy went to, and I don't remember his name, went to the Giants as the assistant GM. So he lost those two guys, and often he lets those guys have some of their own people.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that they're gone, he may let whoever they're bringing in, they've named some people in the last few days, and let them bring in some of their own people. I just think if you got a good guy in your department, you keep him. Why should he lose his job because somebody else left the building?
Yeah, indeed. Here's a cool question. In your career as director of scouting for the Chicago Bears, I'm guesstimating that you probably chose around 100 players via the draft and were responsible for more undrafted free agents. Jordan asks, what's the proudest pick of your career? And it doesn't even have to be with the Bears, just any player that you were evaluated and said, we have to have this one. I got a feeling you're going to surprise me with this response.
Well, the one that jumps out, one was Bavaro, and that was really my first draft with the Giants. And I was part of it I was just in love with Notre Dame players. Mm-hmm. And being it was my first year, I probably oversold them, but I did the right thing in the long run. But actually another Notre Dame player that we took in '86, and he's probably one player that I really jumped on the table for when other people in the room, and this is, you're making your decisions before the draft. This goes back to in February when we're talking about the guy, and nobody had a good grade on this guy. His name is Eric Dorsey. We took him in the first round in the '86 draft. He played about 9-10 years in the league. He was never a Pro Bowler, but a very, very solid player on those good Giant defenses that went to 3 Super Bowls when he was there. And Eric was a 6'5", 265-pound guy when he was at Notre Dame, and he was playing on the nose. And you're going, what the hell is he playing on the nose for? Mm-hmm. He doesn't have a body like a nose. You look at what a guy looks like. You're supposed to be on the nose, and this guy was defensive end or a 5 technique all day long. And so he was not being used, and that's when Jerry Faust was the head coach at Notre Dame. He just wasn't being used correctly at Notre Dame. And so I remember during the meetings, some guys are burying him. I just kept saying, guys, he's better than that. And I was a young scout there then. So, some of the vets were saying, shut the fuck up, and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna, because he's better. And he was misused. And if you put this guy outside where he belongs, he's going to be a damn good player. And it turns out, once the coaches started getting involved in something, we ended up taking the guy in the first round.
How about
But if I hadn't done that early on, never would have happened. He never would have been a Giant.
When you were with the Giants, Bill Belichick was there. Do you have any Belichick stories or a story?
He couldn't scout worth a damn. That's the honest truth. No, he's great now.
Yeah.
we used to laugh at him.
Really?
He's a great coach. Put it this way. He said Lawrence Taylor couldn't play.
Oh, no. Get out.
Coming out of college, yeah.
What a story. That is wild.
And I remember we're down at the Senior Bowl, and there was a defensive end, he might have been from Memphis, that was just tearing up the Senior Bowl. Big, tall, lean guys, 6'5", 6'6", real long, not real heavy. And really wasn't a fit for what we did unless you put him at outside linebacker. And we had two of the best back then, Carl Banks and Lawrence Taylor. But this guy was tearing it up. And so we had, the coaching staff and the scouts are there. So we had a meeting after about the third day of practice. And back then they started practice on Monday, not Tuesday. And you had 2-a-days. So Monday was one practice. Tuesday and Wednesday were 2-a-days. Thursday and Friday was one practice each. So I think this is it. At Wednesday night, we're meeting as a group, and Belichick is just killing this guy. And Parcells just looks at him and goes, "Are we watching the same player?"
Oh, that is great. Yeah, and Bill Belichick now will answer any question that's about the greatest player, greatest pass rusher, greatest defensive player. He will always bring up LT first and foremost.
Well, he was. I mean, there's no question about it. Now, off the field, now there's a guy whose football character was off the charts, but personal character didn't even get to the chart. Worse than worse, but he needed football. He needed football to survive. He needed to compete to survive.
Interesting. Tony says, Eberflus claims to be a disciple of Saban. Do you see any Saban traits in Matt Eberflus, Chicago Bears head coach?
I've been around Saban. I haven't been around Flus to really answer that question. I've seen Saban coach at Toledo, at Michigan State, at LSU, and at Alabama. Watch him in practices. And one thing that Saban does, there's a lot of head coaches that, like stand in the middle and they look at the offense, they look at the defense, they let the coaches coach and they don't say a lot during the course of a practice. Saban's with the defense the whole time because that's what his strength is. And he coaches the hell out of them. And all the time. And that, like I say, Toledo, Michigan State, LSU, and Alabama. He gets as involved as any of his assistants. And he's a great coach.
Yeah. Of this Bears assistant coaching staff, they're the teachers, Poles and Eberflus and the coordinators have been effusive in their praise of how good they are as teachers, the importance of their roles. Have you heard anything about any particular assistant coach that you think, here's a guy to keep an eye on, here's a guy that really knows what he's talking about, here's a guy who could be a potential head coach in this league? Have you heard any stories about that?
Not yet.
Okay.
I don't think that anybody has had enough really time to see any of these guys in action.
Right. Yeah. We have,
the first mini camp was probably an hour and a half practice. And, a lot of that was basic install. And now you've had a couple days of OTAs. You're going to start to see some stuff when you get to training camp. And then, you'll get a better feel. the wide receiver coach, I have always heard really good things about him.
Mm-hmm.
And, as being an excellent teacher and an excellent guy who develops his players. And, with this group of really no names who I think are better than the average fan does, this could earn them a coordinators. If these guys all of a sudden break out this year because, nobody in the media knows some of these names, that could end up getting this guy a coordinator job down the road. And I'm not saying next year, but within the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to look for the wide receiver coach's name, and it just
Tariq Cohen.
There he is. Okay, excellent. We'll be keeping an eye on him. There it is, Tariq Cohen. I wish these guys were available more often through the media, but I also understand why it's important to kind of consolidate who's talking to the media. You don't want a lot of different messages. You don't want all that turmoil of trying to, correct something that was inadvertently said or what have you. But, they should, and maybe they have, the website should at least have an approved interview so that we fans can get to know these guys because they're a big part of the team. These teachers.
Well, I think, although that's something that's not just here, that goes on across the league. And I remember when I first came to Chicago, and we were only up in Pleasantville one year when I was here, so I don't remember Pleasantville at all.
Mm-hmm.
But at least, down in Bourbonnais.
Yeah.
And, the morning practice would be over and everybody'd be walking over to lunch. And the media would be hanging, in that courtyard there by where the cafeteria is, and they'd be waiting for coaches and players. And they had free reign to grab anybody and talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not the case anymore.
Nope. Yep. Much more guarded. Interesting question from Adeptus here is asks, how do teams scout for coaching assistants?
That's a good question. And I can go back to when I was here, and one of our scouts' jobs was to scout coaches because you always wanted to have a short list of the coaches. Jerry did anyway. And I was here with Jerry. And so all the area scouts, one of their jobs was not necessarily write a report, but keep track of who are the assistant coaches that really jumped out and were, good teachers, worked well with their players, more so the teaching ability that could coach the position. And it goes back, and this came from Jerry. Jerry was making a school when he was at Tampa Bay. He was making a school call at the University of California, and Marinelli was the line coach. And he was like, wow, this guy's good. And so he went back to watch him again, and he was the same way again. The next year, the Colts hired him only because of that.
How about that? And I know that Matt Eberflus said that he had a relationship with, we lost Greg. All of a sudden, his internet just gave out. Hopefully, he'll come back in. But I know Matt Eberflus said that he had talked with Lucas Patrick over the years and picked his brain, asked him questions, and he immediately started to realize that this guy has a brilliant offensive mind. This is a guy who can really, really help me if I ever become a head coach. Greg is back.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, it was like went dead.
Yeah.
Where was it? Yeah, but if you can have your scouts give you a short list of top guys in their area, because where do pro coaches come from? They come from the college ranks originally, and so if you can find good ones and you let people know about it. I mean, Daryl Drake we brought in, and may he rest in peace. Daryl never coached in the pros until we brought him here. He was at the University of Texas and been a career college coach.
By the way,
One of the best wide receiver coaches I've ever been around, Daryl Drake.
Really?
Yep.
Is there a coach that made an impact on you? Or let me put it this way. Is there a football administrator, that made such an impact on you that you say, perhaps I would not have been as good at my job if it wasn't for this person? Anyone that inspire you like that?
I'm going to say two people as far as me, and one is George Young, who is the GM for the Giants. And the game changed a lot when George was the GM, and when we got into free agency, George couldn't function as well in that type of world. It was so far away from what his thought process was. And then Jerry was really a deep thinker when it came to, some innovation and stuff we did with a lot of the stuff we did here, we never did in New York. I mean, we had the smallest scouting department in the league here when I was with the Bears. Right. Yet I'll put it up against anybody. We drafted 12 Pro Bowlers. A lot of those guys are in high decision maker levels right now across the league. We had a superb staff. But how did they become that way? Because of what we asked them to do. And it was, and a lot of it was really instilling on them. You got to get the background, and you got to know everything about it. We told them there's no secrets. We got to know everything, so that when he comes in the door, and there's a negative that the press is going to dig up, we're already going to be ahead of it.
What do you think is the biggest misconception that Bears fans who have been detractors of Jerry Angelo are? A lot of people respect Jerry Angelo, but there are some, and I'm reading a couple comments in the chat that are saying, "Oh no, not Jerry Angelo." But what do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about Jerry Angelo?
Who won more here besides Jim Finks than Jerry Angelo?
I can't think of anyone.
There you go.
George Halas, maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Where's George? Where's George?
Won a lot of games here.
Yeah.
I got a bunch of balls here that say division champ and conference champ and everything else. So
somebody wanted to see STC said, Greg, show us that championship football on the shelf. The next show, have that ball handy.
There's a bunch of them. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of those.
Oh, send me a picture of that. We'll show it on the next show.
Okay.
That would be cool. But yeah, he was a winner. And I think a lot of times people overlook the fact, people measure things kind of in a vacuum sometimes. And I'm not being critical of anyone in the chat room here, but I do think that overall we, in general, tend to evaluate things in a vacuum and don't compare it with what else is going on in the league. And
I'm going to say this, Aldo. First, and now that I've been here 21 years, and I have a perception of what the media is in Chicago, especially talk radio, they're so damn negative.
Yeah.
And there's a few that are more negative than the others. You're not allowed to make a mistake. They expect perfection, which is just crazy because you're not going to have perfection all the time. But they expect perfection 100% of the time, and they go overboard to bury you when you don't. Now, did Jerry have some weak points? Yeah. And one of Jerry's weak points was he wasn't real strong in front of the media. Like if he did a press conference or something like that, and so and we used to joke about how Jerry talks. We did amongst ourselves, and I had some great stories, but That's for another time. We could do a whole show on those stories.
Oh, cool. I can't wait.
I'll tell one now. We're down at Bourbonnais, and in fact, we're talking about making sure that you got good coaches, and this was after we've all had a few pops one night. So and Jerry's going, well, I'd rather have a great coach and a bad player. No, I'd rather have a great player and a back. And he just kept getting confused because he was half South. And so we were laughing. And then Rex Hogan, who's now the assistant GM at the Jets, who is as good of an impersonator as Rich Little ever was. And so I just laughed thinking about it. And, we were back, where all those smaller dorms were back in the corner at Bourbonnais.
Yeah.
That's where the coaches were and the staff were. The players were in those two high-rise dorms. And these things were they were like apartment complexes. There were like 3 floors. And that's where we were. So, and we had one room that Robin Wilkie was retiring. She might have already retired, but sometime this month she's retiring. Where her office was, and we had a refrigerator there, and we had a lot of beer in there and goodies and everything else. And so Rex Hogan is in, and because these were set up like an apartment, he's back in that kitchen area where the refrigerator is and stuff is, and he's doing an imitation of Jerry. And he doesn't know, because he can't see around the corner, that Jerry's standing right there at the door.
Oh, no.
And this goes on for about, Rex is doing his impersonation for about 3 minutes. And we're laughing our asses off because we all know Jerry's right there. And Rex doesn't have a clue.
That is great.
So then Rex pops out and he sees Jerry. Jerry goes, well, Rex, what are you talking about?
Oh, that is fantastic. As a final comment, Jordan says, "What a life you've led! You can only imagine what it must be like to work for the Chicago Bears." So I'll ask you this final question: what did it mean to you to work with this historic franchise? I mean, you worked with another historic franchise, the New York Giants. I know how much you love the Buffalo area where you were born, and so you have a kinship with the Buffalo Bills. But for your relation,
by the way, prayers up to the Buffalo area right now.
Oh my goodness, yes, well said.
And that Tops Market,
yeah,
was a third of a mile away from where I went to college.
Oh no!
I mean, I've been in there a gazillion times.
That must really, really hurt. We had somebody here on the bar room, Ken Fang, who's the co-host of the AA team. His aunt and uncle were shot in that California shooting this past weekend. Thankfully, they're fine. But yeah,
at the church, the one at the church,
the one at the church, yes. And so this thing, it's become so prolific, the amount of shootings, that it's starting to affect us. People that we know, places that we've been, and so forth. It's just they say that everybody knows somebody who has or has had cancer. Now you can almost say the same thing with these mass shootings. But
just awful. And my daughter was with her family down at Disney, and I got a text from her in the middle of the afternoon. She goes, "Did you see what happened?" And I said, yeah. And I mean, she was so upset. And that's not far from where she lives. Probably 15 minutes. I mean, Buffalo's not a big city. It's not like, Chicago. The metropolitan area is just over 1 million people. So and you can get anywhere in 10 or 15 minutes. So when I say it's about 15 minutes from where my daughter lives, it's on an entirely different part of town. She lives on the south side. These are on the east side, but still, it doesn't take long to get from point A to point B in that place.
Yeah, very true. But that final question, what does it mean to you personally that you have had this great relationship with the Chicago Bears?
No, it's very enjoyable. I mean, I like the people. I like the McCaskies a lot. You love the franchise. I've worked two places for a long time, the New York Giants and here, and I have equal amount of affection for both, but probably more so the Bears now because it's more recent. I've been away from the Giants now for 21 years, and most of the people that were there when I was working, except for the Maras, are gone now. So, but there's still a lot of people in Hallis Hall that I know well.
Well, we are very lucky that you have graced us with your expertise as a member of the Chicago Bears organization, and we're especially lucky here at the Barroom Network that you do this show with us. Everyone in the chat room has been extremely complimentary.
We didn't touch on one thing. You wanted to ask me, just because I wrote it down before, about those new receivers.
Oh, yeah. Tajay Sharp and who's the other guy? Help me out.
Pettis, Dante Pettis.
Yes. Who? Let's start there because you had him highly graded coming out of college.
I had him as the 4th rated receiver in that draft. I had him as a second rounder. That's where he went. He might have been 4th or 5th off the board. I'd have to go back and look at that draft. I don't know why he is not paid. He had a pretty good rookie season. Was not a starter, but was a contributor, and played within the rotation. And then everything went downhill. And I'm trying to find out. I haven't found out yet. He talent-wise, he might be the most talented guy, pure talent in the wide receiver room. But I've heard stories that maybe maybe he's like Michael Haynes and football's not important to him. But he wants to make a living, and maybe it's going to become important. If they hit with this guy, that's huge because his talent is immense. He's size is average, just under 6'1", 190 pounds, maybe 192. He could run like a deer. He was a very, very good return guy in college, on top of being an excellent receiver and after the catch guy. But the guy I like, and we were doing free agent wide receivers a while ago, and I brought up his name is Tajay Sharp. Sharp has started a lot of games in this league. He was like a 5th round pick. He's 6'2" with real long arms, so he plays like he's a 6'4" guy. He's not a burner. He's a 4.55, 4.56 guy when he was coming out, but he plays fast. He knows how to get open. He's got a very large receiving radius. And he was a guy I was thinking, that's a guy they when you look at who they were signing at the beginning of free agency, I said, this guy fits the mold. And in this offense, he's an X. So, and probably production-wise, when you look at his production, over the course of his career, he might have the most production of all these guys.
Wow.
But that's a good signing. Pettis is a throw a dart at the wall and hope it sticks, because he has failed. He failed in San Francisco, failed with the Jets. He was out on the street. Nobody signed him until the other day. But the talent is huge. So, let's just see what happened with these guys. Put it this way. They're a lot better than the guys. They cut 2 rookies from small schools.
Yeah.
They're a lot better than those guys. And
yes,
both of them have started games in the league. Both of them have had production in the league. And the one talent, Pettis' talent, I know I'm repeating myself, but he's got as much talent as anybody here. It's just why he hasn't done it, who knows? And if he doesn't love football, then he's going to fail here too.
Yeah.
Because you can't play this game if you don't love it. And But Sharp, I think Sharp will help them.
Well, that has apparently been one of the requisites for the Chicago Bears this offseason is signing people who love the game of football. And so hopefully those two veteran wide receivers are living up to that criteria. And it's going to be a fascinating camp this summer once these guys are battling in pads and battling for jobs, because there's going to be a lot of close races, and maybe that's what we should do on our next show. Whenever you want to do it, Greg, let's start talking about some of the interesting camp battles. I'll put together a graphic of all the position levels, and then we can talk about here's a couple of guys that are vying for this spot, and you can comment on that. That might be a really fun show for us to do next time. You in on that?
Yeah.
All right. Let me sign off by letting people know that this is, of course, the first of 4 shows today. At 2 p.m., it's Hockey Talk, Bar Down Hockey Talk. At 7 p.m. is the Mac and Reed show. The guys are going to talk about projections. Are we all sick of projections? People making projections, one loss predictions, before the guys have even put on pads. I'm going to say yes. We'll see what.
I got to say, the national media has got the Bears coming in last.
Yes, they do.
Probably got the first pick in next year's draft.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I think they're going to be a lot better than that. I just want those jerks to be held accountable when this team is better than they were predicted. No, do I think they're going to be a 10-7 team? No, but they're not going to be the worst team in the league. They might not even be in the bottom third of the league.
Mm-hmm. I am with you on that. I don't understand this whole thing about giving grades on draft and making projections, win-loss records, on the national media. For us fans and fanalists, it's fun to do. But I would think that, guys like, I saw Dan Orlovsky doing a segment on NFL Live yesterday. He's going through the entire team schedule and saying it's a win here, it's a loss here, it's a win here. And I go, don't you have something better to present to them?
Sometimes I think the producers have these people do that.
Oh, yes, it's true. It's true.
And they get put in a position because Dan played the game.
Yeah.
And he knows how things can change from year to year.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it is luck, and you keep guys healthy and you keep key guys healthy and you don't get injuries tearing up your lineup. Some of it, you get – who thought the Bears were going to go to the playoffs and win their division when Nagy came in here his first year?
Mm-hmm.
Besides nobody.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, a lot of the things that the media was saying then, they're saying now. That means going into that 2018 season. Nobody thought that they were going to be worth a damn.
Mm-hmm. Very, very true. I just, and you're absolutely right. That's what producers are paid for. Come up with something cute for Dan to do. I think what guys like Dan Orlovsky should do, he's very good at breaking down tape. That's what he should be doing. And I hate it that they spend so much time on these shows talking about the big marquee names, and they don't dig into the trenches to talk about, the right guard of the Tennessee Titans, or the who's going to play the left tackle for the Chicago Bears. Topics like that I think are people who watch those shows really would love for them to cover.
Well, you know why? Because not enough people know who those people are outside of the home market.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, and you got to deal with the national audience there. But I think draft grades are, that's a waste. It's a waste of time having to write it up. They're meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you held people accountable to those,
that's right. Yeah,
you go back and say, "Oh, gee, I thought we had a D when it turned out to be an A."
That's right. That's right.
But they never are, and so it never ends. And it's I had to write up. I never wrote up draft grades when I was working for National Football Post.
Right.
What I did was wrote up how each person fits within the scheme.
Yeah, that's perfect.
and this guy's going to challenge this guy, and yada yada yada. But I was, having done it, I know how it works, and I know how there's not a team in the league that doesn't think they had a good draft a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
They all think they had a good draft. So it's coaching it up, and how do they come in and end up playing?
Mm-hmm.
And then 5 years later to say, oh, you passed up so-and-so for so-and-so. Well, hey, Patrick Mahomes is a perfect example. If everybody thought Patrick Mahomes was going to be as good as Patrick Mahomes turned out, he would have gone first in the draft, not Myles Garrett to Cleveland.
Yep. Exactly.
Okay, he didn't go first. He went 10th or 11th or whatever it was.
10th. I think it was 10th, yeah. You're absolutely right. It's we've got a lot to talk about during the offseason. It's going to be fun. We'll be here. I'm not sure if it's going to be weekly. I doubt we're going to do a weekly show, but the ones that we do are can't miss programming. And then just to finish off the programming for tonight at 9 p.m., it is Science Fiction. The guys are going to be talking about Doctor Strange, of course, the hit Marvel movie that's out, but they're also going to talk about some new upcoming movies and TV shows of the science fiction variety that are going to hit theaters or will be streaming soon. So that's our show for today. Greg, outstanding as always. I will be in contact with you very soon, and we'll all see you all very soon. Bye-bye.
See ya. Thanks.